prepping for SHTF in a metropolitan area. Large city, medium, small city, bunch of large towns grouped together. That's what this video is about. It's not excluding people that live in rural communities and very small towns spread out over wider areas. We'll get to you in a minute. But if you're living in a metro area and there is an SHTF situation, and to let me be clear, I do not mean a small localized event, not hurricane, not tornado, not earthquake, flash floods, nothing like that. A large scale, coast to coast, national type of event, such as an EMP that shuts the grid down. Something on that nature. You have to make the decision, are you going to stay where you're at or are you going to bug out? Now, irregardless, there are pros and cons to both. The catch-22 is the timing of it. Because unless you know for a fact that that event is going to occur, and you know the time of the day, and you leave ahead of time, and you are at your bug out location, you are at your safer than where you were zone, you're going to be with everyone else in that city, in that metro area, deciding, okay, if we're going to hit the road now, walking, biking, if you have vehicles that are still up and running, you're still going to be on a highway and on roads where there are going to be dozens to hundreds of other vehicles every mile that aren't moving, that aren't working at all, and you may not be able to transit through those areas because of that reason. So it's almost as if you might as well leave your vehicle because you're not going to be able to get as far as you thought you would. And then you also run into the risk that depending upon when you're leaving, a working vehicle in that situation may attract far more attention than someone walking. And you have to think to yourself, at how far can you go and decide that, okay, we can't progress anymore with the vehicle, we have to ditch it and all the supplies we brought, and now we have to go on foot. If you're choosing to stay in, you have to remember that cities are reliant on good, bad, and ugly regular service and maintenance. When that stops, everything falls apart almost immediately. When the water and sewer are not working, when the electricity is off, when the backup generators that were running on natural gas hookups, the natural gas is still there, but the generator required service and the service people, they're not showing up because they're at home or they've left. The generator shut off, and then everything else one by one starts to fall apart pretty quickly. You're going to have rioting, and you're going to have looting. You're going to have people that are just out panicking, and you're going to have people that have an organized plan of what they intend to do. And especially if it's a plan of malintent, you directly or indirectly are going to be involved in that some way, shape, or form. So you have to think to yourself, are you prepared to hold the fort down and deal with that when it comes knocking on your door, or more specifically when it comes to kick in your door? Or are you going to risk slipping out under the cover of night, because to a greater extent darkness is going to be your friend, because it's a lot harder to spot someone who's moving carefully and quietly through the dark than it is someone who's in a panic mode, walking along real quick, broad daylight with the backpack on. That person by themselves is going to be a target. If you're moving out with a group of people, same thing. Are you safer moving with a large body where you blend in just as you see animals in the wild, all herded together? Yes, that lion is going to get one of them, but it's not going to get all of them. And you have to remember, you don't know where you are within that group. You don't know who has their eyes on you. The best thing you can do is, again, stay alert, keep your head on a swivel, have a plan, depending upon what you're going to do when something like that happens, because it's the when, not the if. In the cities by themselves, people forget, you have your city, it's surrounded by towns, they're surrounded by other towns. If everyone is moving out in different directions, the density of the population is dispersed. You'll start to see the crowds get a little thinner and a little thinner and a little thinner as mile upon mile is reached, because people start taking side roads off of side roads off of side roads, because they all see that, oh, this is moving faster, let's go this direction, or there's too many people there, we'll go here. Many people, again, they don't have a place to go, so they're just looking for some place. They start to spot a town, or they remember the exit sign that was on the highway behind them talking about a rest stop 4 miles ahead. That's what happens. People start to disperse out, but eventually, because they're going into the smaller towns, the smaller communities, into the rural areas, and we get back to you rural people, the numbers start to pool up. So that small rural community of 5,000, 10,000 people with, 3 miles between them and the next town, 100 people, 1,000 people, 20,000 people start showing up hour after hour. Suddenly your entire town is filled with a slow building wave of people transitioning from their city through the suburban areas into the rural areas. And especially if they're on foot, people are walking, they're going to need rest. They're going to be looking for refuge, whether it be the one motel that's there, or whether it be, the high school football stadium, just because they have a place to sit down. Maybe they've got some shelter that they can put up, whatever the case may be. They're going to be looking for comfort. They're going to be looking for a refuge to rest and recover. And whether or not you like it, they're going to be there. So on your end of it, you have to also now think that they don't know you and they're not specifically looking for you. But if they spot something that is to their advantage, you're going to have some people that at this point, they've got nothing to lose. So whether they come up and they look and say, hey, here's a farm, there's food, or there's a garden, there's food, or, there's a small clinic, there's going to be some meds, whatever the case may be, they're going to be looking to replenish the stock that they have or what they didn't take with them, and try to at least get some sort of normalcy for that time period. How that's going to be handled as far as your town goes, if you live in a community that is prepared for that, then you're prepared for that. Most places are not prepared for human wave after wave of people migrating through in that sort of fashion. When you are in a city, have a bag, have a bug out bag set. Even if you're planning on staying, you're not planning on going, have a bug out bag set, because you may be in a situation where you have to leave where you're at. If you're by yourself, you may have to leave your apartment or your house. You may end up going to your friend's house or a family member's house that's 5-6 blocks away, but you have a bag packed, ready to go. So when you need to, in that split second, you can grab it and get the hell out. If you can, have supplies staged at other locations. So if there are several of you that all agree that we don't have any place to go to, we're going to ride it out, whatever it is, here in our city, have supplies staged for everyone. So if it's a case of your block is compromised and you need to go, you can grab what you can carry and go to your fallback location. If that fallback location, you and your friend or family member have to go, you can grab the additional supplies and move. You'll always be able to grab something and take with you, but you'll be going to the next location where there are still other supplies. If you happen to be fortunate enough to, let's say, work for a small business, a mom and pop type of shop, something where the business owner, or perhaps it's you and you have a physical location, maybe you store some supplies up there. Maybe your business isn't something that people would look to loot in the first place, and you can now store, additional food, water, medicines, that sort of thing, a tub with extra clothes, depending upon the weather conditions, whatever it is, at that location. Someplace that to the immediate public isn't a place that they go, let me go into this accounting office and loot them. People aren't thinking like that because it's of no value whatsoever. People are smart enough to know that an accounting office isn't going to have anything of value for them, so they're going to bypass it. Not knowing that in the back stock room, next to the boxes of files and stacks of paper, you've got supplies for the next week and a half stored up. Think about the different areas that are within your city that you can get access to. Number one, that means other people can get access to it. You have to think about all those little places that you see that, oh, that would be a good place to hide out, or this would be a good place to go in the event of. If you're in a population of 100,000 people or 1 million people, there's going to be at least 10% of the population, including yourself, that have thought that very same thing. So you may be disappointed when you go to that perfect little hiding spot and there's a crowd of 120 to 500 people already there arguing and fighting over it because they all had the same idea. They all had the same idea by themselves and thought they were the only ones. If you're staying in an area that is compromised, radiologically, biochemically, whatever the case may be, the main thing you have to stay focused on is staying safe, sheltering in place, and trying to stay out of the elements until you either know the threat has passed or until you can reasonably assume that the immediate danger is no longer. If you're going to be in transit, always be prepared to find shelter someplace quickly. And in many cases, you may not have a choice directly as to where it's going to be, but you have to be able to quickly get into a building, get into a car even, or a city bus that has been on the side of the road, someplace to find shelter to get out of the elements if it's an environmental situation, or in many cases if it's just someplace to hide until a threat goes by, because there's always going to be a threat, whether it be an environmental threat or it be a human threat. And of course, in aspects of that, we can't negate the small things. A stray dog now, today, really not that much of an issue. Dozens of stray dogs traveling in packs, especially if they haven't been fed domestically for a while, so they've been basically scavenging and scrounging, and many dogs become territorial to begin with. Now you have that additional threat that you're worried about those 3 guys 2 blocks up that look like they're eyeballing you, and then you've got a pack of 2 or 3 dogs that have been running through the streets, and you realize that, yeah, those guys aren't eyeballing you to come after you. They're just thinking, well, the dogs will get that guy first, and then we can get the hell out of here because they're tearing him to pieces. So you have to keep your eyes out for those other threats as well. There's always a danger out there that's in some cases greater than what you may perceive. There's always something, as they say, a bigger fish in the sea that could end up coming after you. Most of the problems cities run into is, logistically speaking, the supplies, the power, the ability to move people in and out quickly. So even if you are of the decision to go, as I said before, unless you're in that first wave that leaves, you're going to be stuck in the middle or at the back of the pack, waiting and waiting and waiting to get out, to the extent that you may not be able to get back to your point of origin, and you may have to make do with where you're at. So you have to be able to come up with the backup plan to the backup plan, as it were. Are you in a location where, okay, you can't get to that next safe zone, but you've been looking around the area and you know that you can find shelter in a group of office buildings? If that's the case, that's where you go. If you're in a situation where you're in a wide open environment and you've been watching the horizon, you see that cloud coming, and you know that there's a good chance that that cloud is carrying the radioactive materials that have been blowing through the area, again, you want to look at someplace where you can get inside and stay safe. If it happens to be a situation where, fights are breaking out, because they tend to do that, people are tired, they're hungry, they're scared, they're irritable, you have people looking to push someone's buttons just because that's what they want to do, you have to know where can you move when that brawl breaks out and people start swinging, stabbing, and shooting, because you don't want to be in between or caught in the crossfire in any way, shape, or form, or getting trampled when everyone starts to run. So again, you got to look to, is there high ground to get to? Is there a barrier that you can surmount and get that between you and the threat? If it's a case of getting low and getting on the ground and staying underneath things and moving along that way, you have to plan all these things out. So prepping for a disaster in the city isn't, to a certain extent, an insurmountable task, but you have many other factors that you have to think about when it comes to where you're living, the surrounding areas, the neighborhoods, the lines of travel in and out, but also thinking below ground as well as above ground, highway transits, bridges, all that sort of thing. There are multiple aspects you have to plan for, and you have to make that decision on 2 levels. Are you staying or are you going? When you do leave, when is that going to be? And if you are going to stay, how long are you going to stay there? So that's all I have for now. It's just some food for thought. Run that through your brain mill for a little while and think about all the possible scenarios within that situation. Anyway, take it easy. Catch you in the next one.